see today. And good morning, everybody. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. And do you remember a time when we thought coronavirus was the craziest, strangest thing we were ever going to see? Then Wednesday happened. And this is not going to be a talk about that directly or about politics. However, and I started working on this talk a couple weeks ago. So it's not necessarily geared to what's going on, although in review, I think it works just fine. I also don't want to be guilty of what some in science of mind and new thought accuse people of doing, that spiritual bypass, just saying, all is well, think positive, everything's going to be fine, you can change your life. The truth is, everything will be all right. I believe that, I truly do. At the deepest and most profound level of our being, all is well. We can choose our thoughts and we can choose to change our life and our experiences. That said, I recognize that what we saw, what we witnessed, is happening in our lives, and it's traumatic for some. And, to speak on this day after that sometimes can be difficult. We want to say something meaningful and comforting and uplifting and help. And that's always my intention, of course. And that's what I still am attempting to do today, yet not being tone deaf, no spiritual bypass, nor will I allow myself to get bogged down in that. But rest assured that I do recognize that a lot of emotions might be in play for all of us right now. And boy, I respect that. And hopefully today we're here to kind of help each other through that, maybe readjust. January is, in many religious science centers, a time to visit the basics of the teaching, and that can be helpful right now to go back to the basics of whatever your belief is. Reverend Temple Hayes says that true faith is anchoring ourselves in the reality, not sentiment, the reality of the divine and the universe and the conditions, and that is willing to say that even though it all looks messed up right now, at the level of the divine, all is well. And that's going back to basics. That's going back to our spiritual core. My intention in every talk is to offer 3 T's: teaching, tools, and togetherness. And I couldn't have that last T without all of you. So thank you so much for being here today. It shows me that you have a commitment to supporting each other, creating new experiences for yourself and the world. And I really, truly thank you for that. We're going to begin with our song to remind us that there is a presence within us, within our times of greatest joy, and it doesn't leave us in our times of greatest sorrow. It's the presence of what some call God, or perhaps another name. It'll be an opening song to settle in, and then followed by an invocation from Catherine. Zach.
Let's take a few deep breaths just to settle into that presence, which is always in this place, which is always present with us. That presence which is source of all, which is all-knowing, all-powerful, everywhere present, and is all good. I call now the awareness to that presence, that spirituality which is within us. And I know that presence is perfect peace. It's perfect harmony. It's highest love, and it's always present, always available, no matter what the circumstances. I know that divine presence, that divine goodness is in everyone here today, as well as all others, no matter what the appearance might be. I know for this service today that we connect with the mission of HCCL, which is to be a force of good in our community, in our world, and even beyond that. I know that because God is our essence, that together we are always creating a bright future. I'm grateful now for our speaker, Reverend Orlinda. I am grateful for all of us gathered today. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you so much, Catherine. I want to begin today by sharing a very technical diagram that I think can be one of the most important ways for us to lead our lives productively in terms of consciously co-creating a brighter future. Now, it's fairly complex, so you might want to grab a pen and paper and take some notes. Zach, if you could bring that up for us. That's it. Yep, you got it. The very technical graphic of one line. That is our first teaching method, I guess, today. We'll call that one of our tools. And excuse me, I've got to get back to my my correct ratio here to get back to my script. Now, a straight line, and I ask you this question as you've looked at that straight line: are you operating above or below the line? This is a diagram from a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's required reading for a ministerial class I'm taking. It's a class on ethics. And I thought, oh, a book on leadership, blah. And actually, I have found it to be very, very appropriate for our spiritual leadership, meaning our own personal spiritual leadership, and for our times in the world today. The authors say you are either above the line or below the line of conscious leadership. And as I read it, it makes sense to me in terms of spirituality and science of mind principles. So I'm approaching it with my version today. At one point, we're either living above the line or below the line. As a leader, and in terms of our leading our own lives, we're the CEO of our experiences, our chief experience operator. So Zach, if you would bring up slide 2 for us so that we can take a little bit of a closer look. There we go. Okay, perfect. So this is actually a slide from the book, and what the author suggests might be ideas or qualities, characteristics above the line. You're curious, you're open to learning, you're inclusive, accepting of differences, and I would add in there honesty, respect, compassion. Below the line, being closed, defensive, blaming others, committed to being right, rudeness. I might add in for me selfishness or dishonesty. Now I'll ask that question again for your own introspection. In your life, are you living above the line or below the line? Thank you, Zach. Did you change your answer after you learned a little bit more? Or because living above it seems better than being below? And below is not necessarily worse. It just means there's a chance to change. The author suggests the first mark of living consciously is being self-aware, and co-creating our life is telling ourselves the truth. So we might want to add truth above the line. Distortion, denial could be traits of unconscious leaders, and a way that each of us can unconsciously lead our lives, and those would go below the line. Now, I invite you, if you'd like to, actually take a piece of paper, and if you choose, make a list of those qualities and ways you experience life that you think are above the line or below the line, or it might be an assignment for you for later. Above the line for me might be integrity, kindness. Below the line, as I mentioned, might be dishonesty, blaming others, and they might be fluid. They can change. A little more on that to come. Interestingly, below the line is normal for many. According to Dan Goleman, author of Emotional Intelligence, the part of our brain that's called the amygdala is continually scanning our environment for threats. Is it something I hate, that hurts me, that I fear? And if it's so, it sounds the alarm. Now, our ancient ancestors, as we know, would fight, run, stand still, or play dead, depending on what was threatening them. The amygdala was doing its job with instinctual reaction to keep them safe. And Goleman says, like our ancestors, we are constantly scanning the horizon for threats. Today, those threats don't often endanger our physical survival, not so many saber-toothed tigers around, although bears and mountain lions in Montana might qualify. Nevertheless, we can have a difficult time telling the difference between a real threat to our body and imagined threat to our identity or our ego, or I would add in our authentic self. We could see a personal threat as our spouse frowns at us, he or she doesn't love me, or our boss dismisses our ideas and we assume they don't respect us. Could be with the images we saw of the chaos going on in Washington, D.C. this week. Even though maybe right where we are, there's no physical danger to us, when we perceive a threat to our well-being, we may go below the line. We don't choose it consciously. Usually we just do it. We may close down, get defensive, double down on being right, on seeing things only our way. We might lash out or blame others. Our ego firmly believes if it's not right, it might not survive, and there is a place for that. But Goleman adds that the higher the stakes, the more the ego will try to survive by being right, by going below the line. I say this is connected to our spiritual and personal experience as well. We see discord going on somewhere else, and sometimes we embody it for ourselves. Now, possibly you, had moments on Wednesday of going way below the line. I wanted bad things to happen to certain people and scream out the window like in that movie Network, I'm not going to take it anymore. And how did I create this? Really, this science of mind stuff? I don't know. Going low happens. It's okay. Now hear this, it's okay to go low. What is not okay is staying below the line when it comes to co-creating a brighter future, and I would say a brighter right now. It's okay to go below the line. It's not okay to stay there. Now, that's a teaching I share, and here are some tools for staying above the line. First, awareness. Knowing when you are below the line is more important than being below the line. Because once you develop the self-awareness and you locate where you are, then you create that possibility for shifting. Awareness. Then shifting, it's moving from closed to open, from defensive to curious, from wanting to be right to wanting to learn, from fighting for survival of that ego to leading from a place of security and trust. Ernest Holmes says, living and leading from the heart. It's a phrase he uses, and of course, many other people use that as well. And doesn't that idea just feel better? I don't know, for me, even saying those words feel better. Oh, I live from a place of love and trust. I live from a place of peace and calm. Just sometimes saying those words and breathing into it feels better. I live from a place of security rather than fear or blame or anger. Being willing to shift and move above the line is key for our emotional, spiritual, and mental evolution. And that's what we're gathered together today to focus on. Above the line is living a conscious life and consciously co-creating our experiences. Below the line, living an unconscious life and unconsciously co-creating our experiences. And as I mentioned, that can sometimes be fluid. Here's a bit of a guide to help you constantly determine where you are with respect to the line and how to shift. And yeah, I use the word constantly, consciously, because it's kind of what it takes. It may sound difficult, but not as much as it sounds. First is simply commitment to live above the line. You can know your commitment by your results, not by what your commitment is. Now, that's a line from the book, and I think it bears repeating. You can know your commitment by your results, not what your commitment is. It's exactly what Science of Mind says. Hey, we're all committed. We're all producing results. Conscious leaders, conscious co-creators own their commitments by owning their results. Science of Mind says if you want to know what you create, look around. Here's an illustration. We're all created to weighing what we weigh right now in this moment. Wait, what? We're all committed to weighing what we weigh right now in this moment. How do I know? Because that's what is. We may say we're committed to weighing more or less, and that may happen. But in this moment, the truth is we weigh what we weigh. And that's been our commitment for whatever reason. But the result, not our words, is the proof. Proof is in the pudding, as they say. I don't know if any of you listen to Christy the wordsmith, but She used that phrase on Montana Public Radio this week, talking about the origin of proof is in the pudding. And the original phrase really is, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And what is meant by that was that you had to try that food to know whether it was good. You have to try it. You have to live it to know it. Just saying it or reading it doesn't always do the trick. So this is a way to determine at any moment if we're living above or below the line, looking at what is. The results occurring in our lives provide the evidence. Now, I want to remind us, we got to look at the good things here too. It's easy to go low and to blame ourselves for something we didn't want or consciously didn't know we were creating. But we can look around and say, wow, I have great friends, coworkers, loving family. I have created a place to live where I'm safe and I'm warm. Whatever it is, look around and say, yeah, look at this. I created this good. So make sure to give yourself credit for all the good and all the blessings that you have created too. Another way to shift is that, contrary to the bumper sticker, shift doesn't just happen. We got to be willing. We got to decide before we can shift to that higher state of consciousness above the line. We can do that by what's called a shift move. The Constitution, I've heard said, is, only as good as our belief in it. Otherwise, it's just a stack of papers. And that's really true with our Science of Mind textbook, the Bible, Buddhist teachings, whatever or wherever you get your spiritual sense of self. So the shift move is considering also the difference between content and context. And Zach, if you'd bring up that slide for us. The difference between content and context. So content answers the question, what are we talking about? Context answers the question, how are we talking about it? How are we talking about the content? An illustration. Someone might say, business leader might say, oh, my profit margin is shrinking. A parent might say, my child's flunking 8th grade. We might say, I want to go to Italy for a vacation. That's the content of our conversation or our thoughts. That's the what. The context answers the how we are talking about or thinking about the content. And this will be important, I'll explain, but from what consciousness are we having the conversation? Based on what we've talked about already, I would suggest that the conversation occurs either above or below the line for most anything that we are talking about. If we think and converse about it from below the line, blaming someone else, ourselves, we might say, I'll never get to Italy, I'll never have enough money. My child will never amount to anything. My coworkers are lazy. That's having a conversation below the line. Now, it is suggested in this book that leaders who pay attention to the context of every situation will see a better resolution of content. It resolves itself more easily, creatively, and sustainably if we attack it above the line. The larger conversation, of course, in religious science is our state of consciousness. And I think we all probably know unconscious means being cut off from our authentic experience. Conscious means we are experiencing what's here and now and responding in the moment, not going below that line to past reactions that may come from fear or regret or anger. In religious science, we have what is called spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. It's a prayer that declares spiritual truth. It is a directed, focused, and organized method using 5 steps to get your desired outcome. And of course, our theme for January is co-creating a brighter future, and treatment is a way to co-create. For just a brief back to basics treatment, in case many of you aren't familiar with or need a little quick refresher, the 5 steps are recognition, God is all there is. Unification, I am one with God. Realization, speaking your desired good. Thanksgiving, grateful acceptance, and release, let go, let God. In Science of Mind, we use words to change a conditions, yet we know the feeling back of those words is where the power lies. Jesse Jennings, a CSL minister in Houston, has an article in Science of Mind magazine this month. You may be familiar with it. He says prayer starts with the reason for praying. Now in Science of Mind classes where we teach treatment, and many of us have taken that workshop here, you teach it at HCCL, we teach the 5 steps, but he's suggesting that a 6th step has been tacked on the front of the traditional 5. It's called purpose. And in the practitioner classes that are taught, we do have to state a purpose of a treatment before we begin. And I suggest it's a terrific step, because before we pray, we have to have a purpose. And the purpose sets out the facts as we know them, so we can decide what we would have in their place. A mental equivalent, if you will. It's a term in religious science. It narrows down that vast field of possibilities into a picture of what we prefer, what we want to step into in that picture. If something stands in the way of our ideal, we identify it and moving forward, claim it's positive. And this is one place we can use that above or below the line model in spiritual mind treatment, in co-creating an experience. Let's say we want to create something different, but we doubt or we fear, or there's a memory of a prior failure that creeps in, stands in the way. Now we look at those below the line qualities or experiences before we move into treatment or prayer, and decide to be willing to move those things out of the way and go above the line. And that may take some work. Here is a personal illustration of what I mean. Some time ago, I was treating for more money, and I wondered one day why this wasn't coming to me. I'm doing all the steps, I'm thinking all the things. If I had more money, I'd have freedom, I'd be more generous, I'd be happier, yada, yada. I decided to go a little deeper when things weren't coming out as I was treating for. I got very honest with myself, took some quiet time, and said, okay, how am I standing in my way of getting more money? And I got an answer that very much surprised me. What I heard was, with more money comes more responsibility of what to do with it. Wait, what? Well, I think I know what to do with it. And I asked more questions. And what came up about that was, realizing that trying to figure out investment stuff, it was a fear. It confused me. Now, not paying bills, all the regular stuff, that's easy peasy, but thinking about my future and money felt frightening. Will I have enough? How can I have enough? What happens if I don't? What is enough? I knew a little about investing enough in my life, mostly to know that it scared me. Where's that fear coming from? Oh, I could make a mistake. I could lose all my money. Then what will happen to me? I could be destitute. And you understand how this unconscious cycle went on somewhere in the cobwebs of my mind, way below the line. I always said if I had a lot of money, I'd give it away to a good cause. But I also would love to go live on a desert island and spend it all on myself. So there was that. Only by digging below the line, coming to that awareness, did I realize where the shift really first needed to happen, and to work with it and to move those prayers above the line. You may be asking for a new job because you hate your boss, you don't like your coworkers, blah, blah, blah. If you go about your treatment from that below the line place, it may work out for you, but it may not. If you dive into yourself and just focus on what you want for the better. Hey, I want to walk into work and love my coworkers or respect them. I want us to laugh in our office, whatever it is. Approach it from above the line. In my experience, it's been so important to get to that feeling of what we want to co-create rather than just the words. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a little painful and ugly, like when I really got to looking at my fears. If you find you're not co-creating a brighter future, you may want to take some time to dig in below the line in that model and get some of that out of the way. Now, remember when we talked about the shift move of considering the difference between content and context? Content, what are we talking about? Context, how are we talking about it? In our treatments, we may be talking about wanting more money or a new job, whatever. How we're talking about that content matters. How we're thinking about it matters. How we approach it matters. Wanting a change in our world, in our lives, in our leadership out of hate might be coming about it from below the line. You want to remember to add a purpose statement to your treatment to help you get clear on what you really want and to build a positive mental equivalent to step into it. Spiritual bypass is not kicking those unpleasant facts aside as we dash for that perfect beingness, as Jesse Jennings says. It is to facilitate the healing of the world. We must first clean its wounds. Let me say that again because it's his quote, not mine. I don't want to mess it up. To facilitate the healing of the world body, first, we must clean its wounds. That can be true in our own life. And you know, a coworker posted something on Facebook the other day about 3 close people she'd lost to COVID and how it was getting very real for her. And she said something I thought was a profound line. There can be no time for negativity when there may be no time at all. Now, that's not to sound like a downer. With or without a pandemic, we don't know what the next day holds for us, how long we're here. But I doubt any of us want to waste time living below the line, living in that negativity when we don't know how much time there may be at all. Ernest Holmes, founder of religious science, says life is constantly seeking its evolution through us, constantly calling to and through us. In order for what's happening in our world to change, something in us has to evolve and shift. So let's recap some of those ways to do that evolving and that shifting, to co-create a brighter world, to live above the line. First, awareness. Knowing when you're below the line is more important than being below the line. Don't beat yourself up about it. Knowing it is the key. Because once you develop self-awareness and locate where you are, then you create the possibility for shifting. Being willing to shift and move above the line is what's key for our emotional, spiritual, and mental evolution. To shift is to make a commitment, make a decision to live above that line. Be aware when you're not. You can know your commitment, remember, by your results, not but what you say your commitment is. You may want to state it, certainly first, but look around, check your results. Shift doesn't just happen, you got to be willing to shift into that higher state of consciousness. And one way to do that is by our consciousness moves. Considering the difference between content and context. Answer the question for yourself in a conversation, in interaction with others, in your treatment. What am I talking about and how am I talking about it? And do I need to adjust or shift above the line anywhere? Do this before your prayer treatment work. It's a tool to clear the way to co-creating. Paying attention to that context in every situation can help you see a better resolution. Get your intentions above the line in your treatments. Add in that first step, add a purpose to your treatment. I heard just this morning on NPR, a man, they were interviewing people about what they were feeling about what went on. And a gentleman, he was from a country where this type of unrest isn't unusual, and I don't remember, I apologize, but he said, first I felt anger, then I felt sad. I'm going to stick with hope. If you remember nothing else from this time together, remember to stick with hope. Those who can deepen into faith when confronted with challenges and become aware of when they're operating above or below the line, have willingness to shift, become a support to themselves, and in turn a beneficial presence to others and the world in co-creating a brighter future. That's our invitation right now, to be willing to constantly deepen our sense of the divine in and through every moment, every beautiful sunrise and sunny day, and through every challenge. And as I am going to ask Zach to cue up our next song, I'm going to offer it as our closing and our meditation before we go to announcements and a benediction. And as Zach brings that up, as I want to share this story about the woman who wrote it, I was looking for the song, and lo and behold, there was an interview from her, and Donna Michaels is her name. And it looks like from the video, she probably is a musician at a CSL center. She said at a challenging time in her life, she had to take a break and walk outside. And she kept hearing this bird chirping over and over, and it seemed to follow her everywhere she went. And she loved the melody so much, she went back inside and sat down and wrote this song. The bird, turns out, was a black-capped chickadee. And she said whenever she hears that bird, it's a reminder that God is with her. God is holding her. And I think it's a perfect reminder for us today. God is holding you through it all. Let's relax to that place within us as we soak in the idea of God holding us through all of it, into the music, the message, and the knowing that God is holding you. Zach. In the deepest peace, love, and gratitude, I give great thanks for the gift of each one of you. As we release any qualities of the past, any qualities of living below the line, we make room for a brighter tomorrow, for moving above the line in all we do, creating a brighter future, a brighter right now. Knowing always, God is holding us. And so it is.
Thank you, Orlinda. Let me add to your gratitude that we have profound gratitude for you. Thank you for the message, for the reminders, and for your first slide, because that's the important one, is to recognize where we are relative to the line.
Thank you.
Thank you. So announcements for this week. Number 1, live above the line. And when you find that you're rooting around in the muck and the mire below the line, we have the ability to recognize it and to change our place. We have a class coming up on January 16th called Mind Over Matter with Reverend Dia Lynn. It's a 2-hour seminar from 10 until noon. The cost is $10. Curiosity Cinema is coming up on the 21st, and it's also about mind over matter. The documentary is Superhuman. It's tangible evidence for the power of the human mind. And it starts promptly at 6:30. There's no fee. So pop your popcorn early and come join us. Catherine, can you come on and talk about Family Promise? I know we have a rotation coming up.
Yes. We are just volunteering on Monday, the 25th of January and Tuesday, the 26th of January. I am very grateful that our volunteers have stepped forth and filled all of our volunteer spots. And also I want to be grateful for the donations to the new family that just had a baby December 26th and really had nothing. So thank you for that. We now have 4 families. A 4th single mother and her 3 children have joined our little group of families that we'll be hosting. So the leadership at Family Promise has been working very hard with other organizations in the community to support the many homeless families that we have in the community. So we're doing good, they're doing good, and thank you very much.
And thank you, Catherine, for organizing this and keeping us involved and whipped into shape here. Now, do we need any more items for the family with the new baby? Do we need clothing for the parents or?
Well, I think there probably is a need. The parents don't have much. The father needs large shirts and 32 by 34 pants. He's a tall, slender man. Apparently, I haven't seen him. And the mother needs small or medium clothes. I think we're getting the baby pretty well covered. There are a few little items like a thermometer, a baby thermometer. And the baby has gotten real sick and had to go into the hospital with a bad respiratory. So they're going to try to keep him in a day center just to have a little, not have to move around so much. But hopefully he's on the mend and will be able to be in the church at the end of the month when we are.
Okay. So, Hickle friends, be in touch with Catherine if you can provide clothing for the adults in that newly formed or newly expanding family. Okay, thank you. Some of you may have noticed the articles and the gratitude from Helena Food Share and the increase in food distribution throughout the state. So please remember Food Share. We can't donate food, but you can go to their website and donate online, or you can send them a check. This is not a time for people to be, well, now is never a time for people to be hungry. And we can do our part easily. Make sure you pay attention to the newsletter. It's where I get these announcements. So if you've read the newsletter, you're probably rolling your eyes like, I already know that, Deb. But if this is the first time you've heard it, go to the newsletter, the January publication, and you will find all sorts of information. Next week, Reverend Dia is our guest speaker, Reverend Dia Lynn from Colorado, and she will be telling you, reminding you, affirming for you that we are all born to be the lights of the world. So tune in next week at 11 o'clock for Reverend Dia Lynn. So this is a time when I open it up because I usually forget something. What have I forgotten? Oh my goodness.
Well, Deb, I would just say to everyone, this can be a time that it's always good to have some, prayer partner support. You can do that for each other, of course, but I'm happy to be there as well if I can assist anyone or be of service. And Deb is welcome to pass along my contact information.
Great.
If I can be a help, and I know you all are a great help to each other as well.
Thank you, Orlinda.
Deb, I have a question for Catherine.
Hi, yes, Reverend Jean.
Catherine, do you know when you said that this gentleman needs work shirts, does he need button-down collar work shirts, or does he need long sleeve Carhartt kind of work shirts? Do you know?
I don't know. They just said large shirts, and I don't think we need like button-down collars or anything. But I guess in my mind, just something warm and maybe a Carhartt shirt or something like that would be helpful. Just anything I think is good. I don't have real details, but thanks for asking, Reverend Jean.
Any other questions, comments, or curiosities?
So Catherine, I'm curious. So it's a large, it's not like extra large or shirt for the guy?
They just said large, right? And so I'm thinking my husband wears that same size pants, and he's got long arms. So, but sometimes he wears if there's tall, if there's tall larges, I'm guessing that would be the best, but I think just a large would probably, cover his wrists.
Okay. I also want to thank Orlinda for today's service. It was very helpful for me slugging through what happened on Wednesday. And it's been, yeah, thanks for lifting me above the line. Thank you.
Well, I don't do that. You do that for yourself, Rosie,
Yeah.
and you do a good job of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Orlinda, for some substantive information and tools to back it up. I am really grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I meant to put the book title in the chat. If again, it was loosely based on this, but if anybody wants more on that, it's 15 commitments of conscious leadership. And again, I'm happy to pass the information on to you if you want to contact me. I meant to put that in there and I forgot.
Well, it will be in the recording because once I get that processed and out to everybody, they'll be able to see the book that you just held up.
Sure.
So thank you. And remember, this is recorded, except for the music. We need to stay in integrity as far as copyright, but I usually get the recording out by 4 in the afternoon, and then you can access it and share it and review it. It's a good thing sometimes to get a do-over, just to get that information deeper.
Orlinda, would you say the musician and the name of the piece again?
Yes, and thank you. I meant to mention that for people who won't hear it on the recording. Donna Michaels, Michaels, and the song is called God is Holding Me.
Good.
They're probably recorded by other people as well, but that's who wrote it and that's who we saw and heard.
It's beautiful.
It really is. I heard it actually just last week at Mile High. I don't think I'd heard it before, and I looked it up, and that's when I found also the fun story she had shared about it.
Okay, then. Excuse me. So if there is nothing else for the good of the group, Catherine, are you next?
Believe I am. Thank you, Deb. All right. I am so grateful for HCCL, for Reverend Orlinda, and for all of our speakers. I'm so grateful for the board who makes this happen every Sunday and who supports the community throughout the week. I want to take this spirit of upliftment, the tools to get myself above the line, to know that God is always holding us. And I bless this time together. I bless this community and all who contribute to it with their presence, with their time, with their talents, and with their treasure, keeping the community going and keeping each one of us moving forward so that we can leave this time together, go out into our community, out into the world and beyond, knowing that we are a force for good and that we are always shining that light. And so it is.
So it is. Bye, everyone.
Orlinda, before you go, it's Diane. I just
Yeah.
want to say that was one of the most meaningful talks, not just timely for now, but timeless. And thank you so much. I'm going to get the book.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Diane.
You do good work, Orlinda. That's why you have a spot every.
Aw.
Yeah.
Well, Well, thank you. And we're all doing the work. It wouldn't
Yeah,
be no purpose to be here if all of you weren't here. So
yeah. Okay, then. So I encourage you all to have a wonderful week, tiptoeing, dancing above the line. You should slip and fall. Know that you have the power with God to bring yourself right back up again. So have a great week. And board members, would you stay online after everyone's left? We've got one issue that I'd like to discuss. So don't go away, board members.
Could we take a 3-minute break, Deb?
Thank you.